Hi, welcome back to Crafting with Kimberly. I'm Kimberly Canale, and today we're going to create with some air dry clay. It's a very fun and useful material, and it can be used for many different things. You can use it as jewelry, as hanging decorations. One thing to remember though, it is not as strong as polymer clay. So if you're looking to create something that's going to get a lot of wear and tear, such as a wind chime or jewelry, you probably don't want to use the air dry clay. You would probably want to use polymer clay that you have to bake. It's a lot stronger. But this is fun to play around with and just use for like some basic decorations. Here's an example of a piece that I have stamped, and I have holes in both the top and the bottom. I'm going to use this as a hanging object with some beads and things. Here's another one. You can see the details that you can get with a stamp. These were some little stamps that I used. And I'm going to make, you can see I put jump rings in them, and I'm going to make some jewelry pieces with these. Here's another set, which are some earrings and a little owl that's going to be a necklace and earrings. So lots of fun things that you can make with this. Some of the tools that you're going to need to use. I definitely like to use stamps. So any kind of rubber stamps that you have. But one thing you want to make sure of, you can see that it's not very smooth. It does have some good deep crevices. This has some good deep parts. Some stamps are very, very smooth. With those, you're not going to get a good impression. This one's a great one. That's what I used for this particular one. So you can see all of the deep grooves. That really helps make a great impression. You can use cookie cutters to get shapes out of them. However, if you are going to use the cookie cutters, you want to dedicate it just for crafts. Same thing as a rolling pin. If you want to use a rolling pin to roll things out, don't use what you're going to use with your food. Get something that's dedicated just for your clay materials. And they do sell plastic tools that come in groups of things. Even plastic cutlery works good to be able to use. You also have paper clips. I think these are great to be able to get the small little holes, and also tracing around to cut. Again, you can use your plastic knife to cut as well. There are molds that you can use that you can put the clay in and pop it out. Again, other types of stamps, anything with a deep impression. You can even use jar lids if you want to trace circles and other shapes. Plastic bottle top caps, anything that you're looking to use for some shapes. Also, these flat stencils will work as well. Especially with this one, what I had done is I had taken one of my tools, used this as a pattern, and then traced around as I was going. If you do push it in for this particular stamp, I used this to make this impression, and I put it on the stamp, and then I took one of my tools that had a point on it, and I pushed it into the clay. The one thing that you can see these holes here? That's where I accidentally pushed too far into the clay. So this is a little harder to use, but it still can be done to get your impressions. You would also like to make sure that you have either wax paper or parchment paper to be able to put your pieces to dry on. If you put it on like a paper plate, the moisture is going to come out of it and it's going to stick to that. Same thing as like a brown paper bag. You want to put it on any kind of a plastic surface. So wax paper, a plastic coated paper plate. You can use placemats, these little plastic paint placemats that I've gotten from the Dollar Tree. These make great tools to use. You can use wax paper or parchment paper. Be aware though, you want a very smooth surface. So I even have my surface covered with a dry cleaning plastic bag. But note that if I were to roll on this, anything that wrinkles, those wrinkles are going to transfer to the clay. So if you want a nice smooth surface, I would highly suggest getting like some plastic mats or working on a very good hard surface with a piece of wax paper taped down so it doesn't wrinkle on you. Clay comes in all sorts of different containers. This particular clay over here, that is a 10-pound container of it. It just comes wrapped in a plastic bag, airtight plastic bag. Comes in white terracotta. I also, what we're using for these purposes, we're using Crayola clay. It came in a 25-pound box. Fantastic clay to work with. It was really easy to use. You can see it dried to a really pretty nice white color, nice consistency, very smooth. You can paint that, you can leave it as is. The one thing you want to do though, because it is air dry clay, it's going to dry in the air. So the minute you take it out of its package, it actually does start to dry out. So you want to work in small little pieces of things. You want to keep it airtight. So to make it easier, instead of using your big container, take it, make small little balls or packages of it. I wrapped this very tightly with plastic wrap and then put it in a plastic airtight bag. To cut my clay, because as I said, I used the 25-pound box, which came with tubes of clay about probably yay by about that high, yay by yay. Heavy, was 25 pounds. Each one was pretty heavy in itself. So as per any kind of hobby that you have, you can always buy tools specifically made for that hobby. You can go as expensive as you want to go. I made my own wire cutting tool by taking 2 chopsticks. I took some 24 gauge wire that I had on hand, took a piece off, wrapped it around my chopstick, made sure it was on there pretty securely, and then took tape, wrapped that all around pretty well, did that to both sides. This way, it was almost like those old-fashioned cheese graters, or not graters, but cutters that you can use to cut blocks of cheese. This works basically just like that. So I could easily slice down. I could start going. I did it a lot of times pulling it this way, pulled it, got halfway through, then I was able to wrap that around together and then pull that together. So this gives you a lot of flexibility. That's a great way to do it. Or you can use your plastic knives. But again, anything that you are going to use with the clay, you want to dedicate it to crafts and not reuse it for food. Even though they say that clay is non-toxic, I still would not use that with food again. Again, you really want to make sure you keep it covered. Plastic wrap is fantastic for that, because now what I'm going to be able to do is I'm going to take a small piece of this to be able to work with, and then what I'm not working with, I'm going to take just a small piece. What I'm not working with, I am going to wrap that back up. You want to make sure it is completely wrapped up and no area is exposed. That's going to keep your clay nice and wet, and it's going to keep it workable. What you need to do with the clay is you need to condition the clay, which means basically just taking it, moving it back and forth like this. That's really all. You don't need one of the pasta machines. You can use those to make a nice flat piece. They use that for polymer clay to condition clay, but it really doesn't need a lot of conditioning. In fact, with air dry clay, you don't want to overwork it. You know, you don't want to sit here and mold it. for 20 some minutes, because then you're going to overwork the clay and it's going to become sticky and hard to work with. So I'm going to use just a little piece of the clay to start with. Two other things that you might want to have on hand is I would have a little cup of water handy. Water helps you be able to smooth rough edges out, helps you put things together. I would get some bamboo skewers, the little shish kebab skewers, or even toothpicks that you're going to need to be able to score your clay, to be able to put clay together. And a fantastic tool is a paper clip. This paper clip can be used for so many things. You can open it up like this. And then now I have a tool that I can hold on to. I can easily move that around to be able to cut things with. I can use it to poke the holes with. Or you can take the paper clip, keep it all together, and you can see the rounded top, and then this would have been the rounded bottom. You can put your clay in between there, and that would work as a jump ring if you're wanting to make necklaces that you don't want to add a jump ring to. This, you can see I did the hole and I added a jump ring. If I wanted to make a pendant or the other jewelry finding, I could put the clay all the way up to there, all the way down there, would be completely covered, and then I would have it already attached to be able to use, because you have to have something to attach your jewelry with. Add a chain, add multiple lengths of things. If you do it this way, you still would need jump rings, because this is a closed end, and you would need your jump ring to connect the two together. So that's a fun tool. The final thing that you can also use is tin foil. Tin foil is great to make shapes with, so you're not using so much clay. You really don't want your clay to be too thick, or it's going to dry inconsistently, and you're going to have much more, it's going to be much more prone to crack. So if you use tin foil to make your shape, you can tell that's going to be a gnome. If you use tin foil to make your shape, you can cover the clay, cover the tin foil that you've made with your clay, mold on top of that, and you're not using as much. So that's a great way to save. Or use this as a base, slide it off, and then you have a hollow inside to your clay. So that's a great thing to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the camera around so you can see me working with it up close and see more of the details. So I have my piece of clay. As I said, I want to condition it again. Also, you do not want to wear any type of jewelry, because this definitely will get in all the nooks and crannies of your jewelry. I'm going to take a small piece here. So I have it rolled into a ball. I am going to take my plastic knife. I'm going to cut it in half so that I know I have equal parts of my clay. Roll it into a ball again. Roll both of them. Get them in a round shape. Then the fun thing with these little tiny stamps, these are fun that you can take your stamp, push into that ball, push all the way down, and now I have, as you can see, the image of the little mushroom there. So you smooth it out, get it to the shape that you want. You can then take your paper clip tool or a bamboo skewer, make a hole. I would turn it on the other side, Go through that hole again. And then one more time. So now you have a nice hole of which you could hang that. So you'll let that dry. You can either put a jump ring in it or let it dry as it is. You can see the bamboo skewer made somewhat of a bigger hole. I'm going to show that again. If you don't like it, that's the nice thing about clay. If you don't like the way it turned out, you do it again. So I have another smaller little stamp here. I'm going to push it down. And now I have that impression. If I didn't like the lines that are there, as I said, there are so many tools. I got these at the Dollar Tree. You can smooth that out. You can use your fingernail. So any of those bumps and things you don't like, you can then take your paper clip, push that through. I always go from the front to the back because you can see with the hole, it kind of pushes the clay out a little bit, where here you're going down in, widening. Here it's not as smooth, but again, you can smooth that out, but I just like the way it looks from the front. So that is an example of that. If you have a impression stamp that you want to use, you can put your clay in. They sell these all over the place. I'm going to do both of those together. Push it down in. Smooth it together. And this is rubber, so then you can just easily flip that out. And there's the impression from that. So those are really fun, but you can see because it was very deep crevices. The other thing I want to show you is I'm going to set that down. I'm going to roll it out. If you do not have clay tools, if you do not have a rolling pin, you can use a glass bottle, anything smooth that you can roll your clay out with. You also, rule of thumb is you want to keep it about the width of 1/4 inch. Anything smaller than this is going to have a good tendency to crack. Now you can see as I rolled that out, you can see all the little marks and cracks that came around the side. That's when you take your finger, dip it into water, kind of rub some of that off, and you can smooth around your edges. That gives you a nice smooth edge. You don't want to use too much water though, but you can see how easily all those edges come right off. You can smooth your clay this way, but if you use a lot of water, it's going to get sticky. So don't use too much water. That's about all you would use. So now I have a nice surface. I'm going to take this stamp. I'm going to start pushing just with my hands. Now I'm going to take one of my tools. The tools are nice because they have little ends on them. So if I follow along, I can somewhat push that down in, getting a good impression, using different tools for different things. Pushing it in. You can also see like these bamboo skewers are really nice to work with. They have very pointy ends or a flatter end. I'm going to use the pointy end. So that's going to let me get down in between here. The only thing you have to be careful with is, like I said, that it's slippery. So it's definitely going to make holes if you slip. The other thing you can do is once I have that on my stamp, once I have it where I want it, I can turn it over. I can roll it. And then peel away. And that gives me the impressions as well. But you can see that also by, I would have rather have done that a little thicker because you can see how thin that got. So again, all you have to do, take it, just roll it around a little bit again. I'm not going to roll it all the way this time. So that's pretty thick. I'm going to put my stamp down, my stencil, put that down. Now I can roll to the consistency that I want. Flip that back over. Carefully peel that off, and now you can see that's a really nice impression. If you want this to hang and dangle, you definitely have to put your holes in. Again, the paper clip is a great way to do a hole, or you can take a straw. I want my hole to go there. Just gonna spin that around. And then now I have a nice big hole there. I can take some water. I can smooth that edge all the way around. Make my edges nice. And then I'll be able to put some twine in there, and I can have that be hanging down as like a mobile or a dangle. When you're finished, you would just set it on a flat surface. If you put it on something curved, it's going to curve. So I wouldn't want it to be on that edge. I would want it to be straight on my paper. If you are using a bigger stamp, I'm going to put that down. I'm going to roll it. I'm not going to roll it to the exact, 1/4 inch. I'm going to leave it a little bit thicker. I'm just picking it up, moving it around, spreading it out. So that's thicker. This is thicker than my 1/4 inch. I'm going to take my stamp. This is a nice big stamp. I really like the flowers in this area, so I'm going to work with that. I'm going to set that down. I'm going to push down pretty hard. I'm going to wiggle it back and forth this way. I'm going to wiggle it back and forth that way. Really pushing, getting it in there. Pulling it off. Now I'm going to carefully remove my piece. And you can see that that gives just a beautiful impression. It flattened it a little bit more for me. So if I had gone to just 1/4 inch, by my pushing on that, I would make it even thinner. So by keeping it just a little bit thicker, that gives you a nice impression. So with that, with having those marks, I can either take, bottle caps as circles. I can cut parts out like that. There are many clay forms that are specifically to make jewelry. This would fit very nicely right there. I could push that down, pull my clay off of that. I'm going to push it all the way through. Pull off the sides there. And then gently push that out. And that gave me a really beautiful pendant, but make sure you never want to do your holes right at the edge. You want to go down. So when clay does have a tendency to shrink a tiny little bit. So you do want to go down a little bit. I'm going to come down to about here. I'm going to put my hole in, push it through, wiggle it, turn it on the other side, just make sure that really has gone through, turn it back around, go through one more time. There's my hole, and that's going to be a very pretty pendant that you can either put cording right through or put a jump ring through. But you can see with the stencils what a beautiful pattern that makes. But you can see that's like a perfect consistency. You know that's not going to crack. Anything thinner than that, you do have a tendency to worry about it cracking or not being as sturdy. You can see this is a lot thinner, but I haven't done anything with this yet, so I don't know if it's going to stay sturdy or if it will crack. You can polish or spray coat your clay. You can paint it, and then you can also take a spray varnish. Use a water-based spray varnish. Spray it on there. You can also use Mod Podge to seal it if you wanted to get them sealed. You can use any kind of acrylic paint. You do not want to use oil paints. Oil paints have a very different consistency, and it will affect your clay. So if you do want to varnish them, you're going to use a water-based varnish or your Mod Podge. Here's a shape that I made for a gnome. To do that, I'm going to take some of your clay out, cover it back up. I have to condition this, so I'm just going to squeeze it a little bit. I'm going to roll it out a little, get it to a consistency that I want. And again, kind of sticking within that 1/4 inch idea. So now I can start wrapping this around my form, bring it together. So look at, if I were trying to make this, that's a lot of clay that I'd have to use. With this, I don't have as much clay that was needed. I can just press it with my hands. I can start smoothing that in. Pushing it all around, and now you can see I have a gnome shape taking place. And I could continue going and creating a gnome. And then once it was dry, I should be able to squeeze that out and pull it out. Or if you're afraid of it cracking and breaking, personally, I would just leave it in there and I would cover the bottom with clay. I would go all the way through. One thing to note, when you're needing to add pieces on top of it, I want to take this clay and I want to do a brim of a hat. So I want to just kind of bring that out, leaving it a little thicker than I want. I'm going to take my paper clip. I need to make some marks in the clay. I'll just do half. And possibly even take just a tiniest bit of water. I want to do the same thing with my tube here. Do some marks, rough it up. And then now I'm going to add this piece on top and gently push. Because if I did not do that, if I did not make marks to kind of glue it, Velcro it together, it would have a tendency to dry and fall off. You want to give it its chance to adhere well. So you just want to make sure wherever you want to put it, you're putting marks on each end, on each side, so that adheres nicely. Same thing I would do if I wanted a nose. You're going to make some marks. You're going to make some marks. Take just the tiniest bit. Like you see, I'm not really drenching it. I'm just making my finger a little wet. Putting a little bit of liquid there. And then attaching. And again, if I've got some finger marks like that on there, I got some nail marks. That's also when you have a wet finger. You can smooth all of that right out. And then again, with the tools or spoons or whatever you want to use, this has a tool like that. I can just kind of smooth that down. So then I know I'm really adhering that in there. And you would just keep going all the way. If I wanted to do the whiskers, same thing. You could make roll out nice long tubes. Roll out a nice long tube. Scratch all your surface up. Again, with clay, if you make a mistake, it's okay, because again, I can take that, I can smooth that out. So scratch it all up. Scratch some of that a little bit. And now I can lay that down. I can make curlicues. I could go long. Once that was completely covered, I could have it coming out and down. So whatever you want to do, that's just a lot of fun, and you can keep going with that. Again, I personally would keep the tinfoil in there and cover the entire base. Another thing I want to show you is I have a piece that was made. It had dried, but it accidentally got broken. The little tail part fell off. And I want to show you how you can fix your pieces if that happens. You want to take a small little piece of clay, put it in a cup. I don't know how much I need yet, so I'm even going to take just half of that. So I'm going to take the small amount of clay. I'm going to put it in my cup. I'm going to add a little bit of water. I'm going to take a tool and just start mixing it up. I can already see I have way too much water in there. Just a small couple drops are in there. So I want to mix it up. You're basically breaking down your clay and you're making what is called slip. So I'm mixing it up and I'm trying to get it to be the consistency of like a pudding, like a thick pudding. So I'm just going to keep mixing that up. And you can see, hopefully, that it's a very soft consistency now. It's clay, but it's not really clay, and it's moldable, but not really moldable. So you can see that it's definitely kind of gooey now. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to smear it on the part here that's broken, on the back, on the sides, and on the front. I'm going to take this part, push that back together. I'm going to now take some more of this mix and basically paint it right on there. I want to get a nice covering, so you can see that I'm mixing all of that together. You may need to do this in steps. You may need to do the front part and then do the back part. But I'm going to put this all together on here. Smooth it all out. I'm going to gently hold it. I'm going to come to the back side, get more of this. Again, I'm smoothing it out. Getting it all covered, making sure, especially I'm putting a lot if it near the where it cracked. If it is bumpy, you are going to be able to take some very fine sandpaper and rub that out if you want to. I am now going to flip it over on my surface that I want it to dry on. I'm going to smooth a little bit more on top there. And then I'm going to let that dry. That should fix. Now, every clay is different. Some will work, some will not. You know, some you may have to glue, some you may just have to say, well, I'll have to make it again. But that is how you can fix a cracked piece. Also, if you have any edges that are cracked that you don't like, you can take and fill in any of those cracks that you see. And let that dry, and then again you may want to use some sandpaper. But that is how you can fix cracks. I would let that dry first before I put any more clay on top of that, because you know you could put another piece of clay and smooth that all out, but I would try that first, let that dry, see how that goes. If it still doesn't hold, do that process again, then put some clay on top of it and smooth it out. But try it that way first. And again, the way I put the wing on, I scritched back and forth and then attached it. And this wing is on there very solidly. Otherwise, if you don't do that, however you build your pieces up, if you don't do that, it is definitely going to have a problem. And I just, for the last thing that I want to show you, I want to show you how you can make the pendant out of the paper clip. So I'm going to take a paper clip. I'm going to kind of mold that out, flatten that out, just shape it with my hands. And by shaping, I'm also conditioning. So I'm just going to shape it out. I'm going to make sure that's pinched together. So I have a top and a bottom. I'm going to put that right in the middle. I'm going to see how I make sure I'm going to push that down some. Pull some of that off. Put that over the top. I don't really need to scritch that part of it because I'm putting it on something. Just going to push that down. Make sure my hole is valid. Same thing on this end. So you can see with a lot more careful work, you can see how that would give me a pendant to have dangles from the top and the bottom, being able to connect that as jewelry, you know, in whatever shape or form you want that to be. Again, I'm doing this quickly. You would take your time, really pushing it down, smoothing it out, getting it to look, you know, in the shape that you want, the nice shapes that you want. I could just turn that right into a square. But that gives you, smooth it out. That gives you the idea of how you can use paper clips as hooks. And these are nice too if you really want to use the hangers and you want to add little dangles through. This is a fun way to add a dangle to it. You can even use buttons. I'm going to take that button. I'm going to just press that in there. Pull it back out. That gives you an impression. So anything that has bumps, anything that you can use to use as impressions works really well. So once you have your pieces on like a paper plate with wax paper, you want to set that aside somewhere. Keep it in a nice, relatively dry area. You don't want to dry it right in the sun. That's going to dry it too fast. It's going to crack. Just leave it on a table somewhere. Definitely needs to dry for 48 to 72 hours. I know the package usually says dry within 24 hours. Don't trust that. Let it dry for 24 hours. Then flip your pieces over, let those dry for another 24 hours or so, flip it back over, and then see if it needs any more drying time. I definitely would wait 72 hours. Definitely wait those 3 days before you want to seal it or paint it. It just really makes sure that your clay has dried completely through and it's not going to give you any cracks. Because if you start to paint on somewhat wet clay, it's going to change the texture and the clay will dry funny and it will crack. So you really want to try to avoid cracks at all times. But again, I showed you how to make that slip and be able to fix them, so it's not the end of the world if it does. But if you give yourself, let it dry for 24 hours, flip it, let it dry another 24, flip it again, let it dry another 24, then you know you're definitely going to be good and you've got a nice dry piece. The final thing I want to talk about is cleaning up. You can see that with the stamp that I use, you get clay that's left in. Easiest way to clean these up is to let it dry, then just take your bamboo skewer and you can pick the clay right out. Now this isn't dry yet, so that's why it's not coming out, but if it were dry, you can see those pieces will just pick right out. And then you can also just wipe it down, rinse these off, wipe it down with a wet wipe. That's the easiest way to do that. Again, when you're all finished with your clay, you definitely want to wrap it really tight with your plastic and then put it in. Easiest way is Ziploc baggie. Squeeze the air out, roll it on down, and Ziploc that up. And then your clay will last a really long time. As long as it's not exposed to air, you've got the chance to really use this for a long time. Again, I closed it, but it didn't close all the way. It has air. Squeeze that air. Make sure there's not a lot of air in there, just in case you didn't put your plastic on right. And then close that all up. You want to keep this in a cool, dry place. You don't want to put it in the refrigerator. That's too cool. You don't want to put it in a basement. That would be too cool. But just don't let sun hit it. Just keep it kind of in a cooler area with not a lot of sun. So I hope you had fun playing with this new medium. Go get some clay because it's really a blast to make the things with it. Super easy to do. Adults, kids, anyone can work with this material. Really easy to do. And you can see I haven't washed my hands yet. My hands are still pretty clean. I really like that Crayola clay. It really, even getting your fingers wet and mushing in it, it really does not leave a big mess. So definitely go get some and have fun playing and making some creative little items. This is Kimberly Canale, Crafting with Kimberly. See you next time.